According to Jack Kelly's 2005 book titled Gunpowder, Alchemy, Bombards, and Pyrotechnics, huoyao, or fire drug, is what the ancient Chinese alchemists called gunpowder, a substance used in health elixirs to ill effects until its true potential as a weapon was realized. After much trial and error, these alchemists successfully innovated the tripart mixture of potassium nitrate, sulfur, and carbon into a usable tool of puissant potential for war. In the 13th century, this fire drug would arrive in Japan by way of 2 invasions by the Mongol army, and there its manufacture and use would become a special skill set of the shinobi no mono. The fire skills, or kajutsu, of shinobi would never have been possible without the knowledge of gunpowder. A survey of the fire tools in the texts they left behind communicates this with scores of recipes for rockets, clay sphere grenades, landmines, torches, fuses, and flame-producing blinding powders. With these tools, a shinobi was able to burn down castles, incinerate entire villages, send light far away on an arrow, produce an expedient emergency fire, and create fulminations that startled and threw the organization of an enemy into chaos. The ignition source for a ninja's torches and hinawa fuses, or literally fire rope, was a bamboo container of char cloth which produced glowing embers with a strike of flint and steel. These embers could be carried over long distances and were fed by the shinobi's breath to ignite torinoko, or fire eggs made of bundled straw, that were then touched to the gunpowder mixtures of torches, permitting rapid lighting of multiple tools at once, a method of action suitable for night raids. In a lead up to a raid, shinobi would combine stealth with fire to observe an enemy in their sleep, sometimes using blowgun darts with gunpowder payloads to light up a room or a gondo lantern. The Bansenshukai advises a shinobi to light a torch on one side of a dwelling and to peer in from another, keeping oneself hidden in the shadows should the enemy awake and fix attention on the lit torch. Armed with the knowledge of the layout of the enemy complex and how many targets they were dealing with, a large team of shinobi would be dispatched to the enemy complex on a moonless night, preferably with strong wind conditions. At a distance of about 100 or 200 meters, the koshi, also known as the fire performer, would begin lighting his torinoko eggs and take up a position close to the target for hoka, what is known as an arson attack. He would carry a bundle of torches, a dozen or so being common for a 2-man team, and would start lighting them once the signal was given. On his right stood his hizo, or fire assistant, who would help him throw the torches, expediting the attack process. As the flames of these torches began to spread around the perimeter and over the target, another section of the shinobi team would take up position by the doorways of the structures and draw rope across the entranceways. Shinobi would funnel the occupants of a burning complex to dedicated kill zones in this way, locking other entrances from the outside with a Z-shaped iron tool. Those who would awake during the raid to a building in flames would rush to escape through the only entrances that were not blocked. After tripping over the ashikarami traps on the way out, the enemy was swiftly eliminated by blade the moment they hit the ground. Those who could not find an escape route or did not wake up were incinerated. This was the brutal but effective means by which shinobi would take their opponents by surprise in their sleep, always leaving little chance for survival to the enemy. This is one reason why the duty of a village watchman and togiki listening scouts was vital, for if they could not detect the start of a raid in its incipient stages, it would send many to their deaths. Shinobi knew this, which is why within the Bansenshukai there are repeated precepts of knowing the inclination to laziness within human beings, and how watchmen tend to become inattentive over a time of inactivity. This laziness and inattentiveness gets people killed and may lead to the destruction of a castle. These arson attacks were among the most important jobs of a shinobi. If a castle was vaunted by the enemy as unimpregnable, a shinobi would rise to the challenge and infiltrate with ease by yonin disguise arts and inin athletic skills. Once in the castle, the shinobi would map it out and communicate with his allies outside by means of yobumi, or messages attached to arrows, detailing the going-ons inside the castle and the proper time for a siege. Once the signal was received, perhaps by way of a Naroshi smoke signal, the shinobi would set fire to gunpowder stores, food stores, and wood supply within the castle. The ensuing flames would confuse and occupy the enemy as the allies of the shinobi moved into position around the castle to engage from the outside. In these situations, it was a ninja's skill of hoka that produced the conditions for victory, and so relevant to notions of survival, it is historically evident that shinobi were quite familiar with the means of starting, carrying, feeding, smothering, and utilizing fire as a tool. Their uchitake and flint and steel were everyday carry items essential for food preparation, warmth, destruction of structures and messages, and signaling. As the knowledge of starting fires is considered basic to survival, survival, we can say shinobi were well beyond the basics with their wide knowledge of incendiary warfare and the fact that they lived during a time when primitive and rudimentary fire-starting skills were common to most people, as evidenced by volumes 21 and 22 of the Bansenshukai. A ninja's recipes for incendiaries conveys requirements that prove ninjutsu involves knowing how to source fire resources from the natural environment. Pine resin, for example, is known to modern survivalists as an aid in fire building, but they may not know that ninja collected and used this substance to a great degree in modifying the burn rate of their black powders, and it was also applied to torches as a flammable hydrophobic to repel water. Other common ingredients in their fire tools include camphor, moxa, wolf, hawk, and mouse droppings, green tea, and chili pepper. For example, a recipe for a smoke signal called the Naroshi signal powder calls for a mixture of wolf droppings, moxa, saltpeter, and ash, while an attack torch calls for gunpowder, camphor, moxa, pine resin, mouse droppings, and powdered green tea. While I'm on the subject of ingredients for tools, let me posit a theory on a tool called uniqueness that we find in the Bansenshukai. The ingredients for this tool are in code: 112 grams of moon, 215 grams of sun, 29 grams of star. A researcher named Yunoki Shunichiro believes, on the basis of cross-referencing the gunpowder ingredient amounts among the Bansenshukai's recipes, that sun is saltpeter, sulfur is moon, and ash is star. I think this is incorrect because the Chinese alchemists associate sun with sulfur as it is yang, and moon with saltpeter as it is yin. This would help explain why this tool is labeled as unique, because it calls for double the amount of sulfur relative to saltpeter, making for a unique burn. But this is just a theory. In studying the fire arts of ninjutsu, a student may be impressed with the following practical considerations relevant to survival. First, one should carry a lighter or other fire-starting implement at all times, as one may never know when a fire will be needed. This is especially important in the cold seasons. Second, one should appreciate and respect the destructive power of fire. Fire is not something to be played with, and a ninja fully understood this, especially when mixing gunpowder. Incendiary warfare is given extensive attention in ninjutsu, as strong fires can lay waste to whatever they touch, particularly under conditions of high wind. Shinobi were known to destroy entire villages by setting fires in one burst, in synergy with wind, breathing life into the inferno. Lastly, know that there are many naturally occurring substances, pine resin for example, that can aid you in building emergency fires. Until next time.